Welcome to Say More, the Powerhouse podcast dedicated to elevating the voices and journeys of women striving for the C-suite and those who've already conquered it. Brace yourself for candid conversations, illuminating interviews, and unfiltered insights as we delve into the triumphs, hurdles, and invaluable lessons learned along the path to success. Join us on this empowering journey where inspiration meets empowerment and wisdom reigns supreme. Get ready to ignite your ambition, harness your potential, and thrive alongside your sisters on Say More. Thank you for joining another episode of the Say More podcast, where we meet women from all spaces of life, whether you're a college student, whether you're on the C-suite track already there, or maybe you just aspire to be there and you love to just learn and grow here. That's the place for you. And today we have a wonderful, wonderful guest. Not only we're going to unpack her journey, but she has a lot of great, I call it lesson golden nuggets that she's going to share and that you'll want to share with all of your friends. Shar Zain, thank you so much for joining the Say More audience.
I am so excited to be here. Thank you so much for having me.
So as always, we have the icebreaker question. So what was your first ever job and what did it teach you?
So my first ever job was a season pass picture taker at Six Flags. And what it taught me was I didn't want to be a season pass picture taker at Six Flags for very long. It was the only air-conditioned job, which was a plus, but it was not. I quickly learned that was not for me.
And listeners, that's what we will discover. I know that everybody has the thing that got you to the place that you really wanted to be because you learned enough that you didn't want to do it. So what's one non-negotiable part of your daily routine that you just got to do that? And that's just a non-negotiable.
You know what I think is funny? Like, again, very cliche and very simple, but coffee. You know, there's all these coffee mugs that say, but first coffee. Like, I actually live by that. If I have not had my espresso, because not just coffee, if I have not done espresso, you probably don't want to see me be in my realm. It is part of like 100%, like one of the only things I do 100% of every single day. There must be coffee.
That espresso. So if we looked at your playlist or podcast right now, what would be on repeat?
It's so funny. I very much wear my elder millennial crown as a badge of honor. And there's always some 90s and 2000s, like hip hop and R&B and pop songs. Like that's all I listen to. But I also have two little girls. And so I don't know who else out there is living this life with me, but K-pop Demon Hunters is also like constantly playing in my head because of how many times I've watched it. Those are the two like very disparate genres that are on repeat right now.
I love it. So what's a quote or mantra that you live by?
One of the things that I think is really important is leading by example. And so I sort of try to live by like, don't ask anyone to do anything you're not willing to do yourself.
I love it. And lastly, before we get into the full conversation, what's one thing people would be totally surprised to learn about you?
So I can knit and I like knitting. That's like, so it's so funny because I was talking to one of my friends and I was saying, oh yeah, I'm like knitting the scarf. We live in Florida, right? So it's kind of crazy that I'm knitting, but they were like, you knit? And this is somebody that has known me for like my entire life. And I was like, I don't know when it happened, but it happened. And now I'm an old lady. I'm just missing the cat.
I love that because again, with all the energy and just fast, I would never have guessed in a million years, listeners, that because knitting is very slow and it's like in calming. And I'm thinking, I can't believe it. I can't believe she'd stay in the same place long enough to do it.
No, it's sort of mindless and muscle memory, so it doesn't require a lot of my brain power, and it's a nice little wind down activity.
Yeah, I love it. So as you can imagine, audience and guests, this will be a great conversation. So Shar, could you tell us about your journey from business development at XL Health to now leading Florida's largest managed care organization?
Yeah, so I'm going to try to make this brief, but no career is linear. It's funny because I started out as an intern over the summer between my junior and senior year of college. I went to school and thinking I was going to be in like international business. I went to school for economics and I had a minor in Spanish. So I was like, yeah, I'm going to be like it. I'm going to be overseas. It's going to be great. No. On junior to senior year, I took an internship and the only requirement that I had was that it paid $15 an hour and had parking. I was like, okay. Well, I got in there. It was a startup environment and I was hooked. Like dynamic, fast paced, every day was different. And I learned so much in that summer. And I think that the thing that kept me there was actually my first boss. So he is still my friend today. He is my mentor. He has been a sponsor to me. And so I think like when I think back to how I started and ended up staying in healthcare, like that was a pivotal point. Like I ended up working there over my last year of college because I only had classes 3 days a week. So I was working there part time. I ended up staying at my first company for 5 years, which now feels like, it's probably like a mid amount of time. But I fell in love with the dynamics of healthcare and the healthcare industry, especially on the government sponsored side. I fell in love with helping people. I fell in love with the broader, greater good sort of opportunity that we had. And so, going from there, I've been in, sort of government sponsored programs my entire career. And what that really is Medicare, Medicaid, and now the Affordable Care Act sort of healthcare industry stuff. But, I think the journey is what you'll find is I've always had these weird things. Like I had facilities for a little while. And so people were emailing me about like burnt popcorn in the microwave. So I've done everything from like where I'm at today to facilities. I've had, the opportunity to lead provider data management. I've had an opportunity to lead provider, engagement and relations and operational, units and areas. And so I've had so many different opportunities and those come because, one of the things I always tell people is like say yes. You're never going to be ready. Like I didn't know anything about some of those things as I took them on, but getting to know the team, listening to what barriers they're facing, how I can help them helps you, continue to position you for bigger and better and different. And it's not always, a promotion. It's lateral, it's up, it's over. And so just being able now to sit in this role, I've been at Sunshine for 6 years, having again a lot of different kinds of roles. Like, will you go do this? Yes, I will. Will you go do that? Sure, why not? To now where they were like, will you? And I was like, okay. So I think that just, the common theme is they don't all like make sense like as you're doing them, but as a grouping, it does sort of give you different perspective and context to be able to continue, to grow and develop. So I know that was a little bit long-winded, but I tried to make it short.
But it's great because a lot of people on their journey, whether they're already there or maybe they're trying to figure out for a second career, or maybe they're just getting started, or maybe, they just really just don't like the job that they're in and they're trying to figure out how this all makes sense. What you've put in context for us, it's not always about promotion. What it is always about is learning, doing, saying yes, and that there is a path for it. Because I think about you in the CEO role now, you were planting all those seeds that you were planning with getting ready and saying, yes, I'll do this opportunity. I'll learn this. It makes you ready day one for the role that you've stepped into. So a lot of people might see it as overnight. I see it that you were planning from the internship on. So thank you. Thank you for sharing that. What leadership lessons did you learn early on that have stayed with you through your rise to CEO?
I think one thing, and as I reflect on it, like I don't know that I knew it at the time, but as I reflect on it, the importance of mentorship and sponsorship cannot be overstated in like your overall ability to continue to move up and have different opportunities come to you, right? So I think, and I use those words differently, and mentorship and sponsorship to me are different. And Mentorship is like, hey, we're going to talk. I'm going to give you some advice. You're going to maybe tell me how it goes. And sponsorship is, I'm going to put my political capital out there for you. I am going to put you like with me. We are a package deal. Now your performance is tied to my name. I have said like, I know Kim can do it. Kim is the best person for this job. And, it's a step beyond like a behind the door relationship, which is still very important and has a place. But, sponsorship really does take it to the next level and is absolutely vital for anyone wanting to continue, especially rapidly, like to grow and develop and have promotional opportunities or opportunities to learn something new that they maybe haven't done before because people trust that they're still going to be able to do it.
I'm so glad that you put some time and effort on expanding on that for the audience because I hear so often, I know you've heard the same thing about my mentor, my mentor, my mentor. And they don't realize that the real Cadillac of the deal that you really want is a sponsor. And I think the other thing that you've shared in the audience should pay attention to it as well. The relationship that you have with your first boss and the sense of how and it doesn't always have to be, I mean, yes, it's about say more, but it's not just about women because like you, it sounds like your mentor sponsor was a male. Mine have been males as well. Anything that you want to share on that as well?
For sure. So, I've been so fortunate that over the course of my career, I have had lots of bosses, but like at least 4 or 5 of them have been what I would call sponsors, giving me different opportunities, putting me up for, different like types of roles. And I think, while it started with my first boss, like many bosses along the way, like I would not be sitting in the chair I'm sitting in without their time, sweat equity, like their voice and their support. When I was having my children, I had a female boss who was, my first female CEO. And I learned so much about like a stylistic approach that was different, right? From having like male mentors, male sponsors in the past. So like thinking about how again you pivot your own leadership strategy and how that evolves based on what works for you, how your personality is. So really benefited from all like different sponsors at different points in my career that have been a combination of men and women. And I just hope that like what I take from that is being able to pay it forward to the people that come behind me. The it's not a hand out, it's a hand up. And, being able to do for others what was done for me and what has been, what I've benefited from, and I'm not putting it all on them, right? Like I had a responsibility to do what they
Yeah.
thought I could do. But having somebody in your corner who believes in you, who you can talk to about all the different things is really a career differentiator and accelerates and amplifies the work that, you're already doing and doing a really good job at.
I love that. And as you talk about the people that follow you and how do you navigate the demands of executive leadership while remaining grounded as a wife and as a mother? Because I know a lot of people are like, well, hey, it's either one or the other. So how does that work for you?
I am so incredibly blessed that my family keeps me so grounded. When I clock out of here, it's mom, mom, mommy, mom. Where's my shoes? Where's my shirt? Where'd you put? So I think that element, like I'm always mom's my kids, and I'm a wife and a mom first. And the other thing is like my husband is the most supportive person, and he is always willing to do more than his fair share, like of whatever it is. And I, again, like similar to mentorship and sponsorship, like I wouldn't be sitting in this seat if he wasn't. And if my family didn't understand sort of the demands of my time and how that fluctuates. Sure. Sometimes like, I get to go hang out and take them to their practices. And sometimes I'm out of town and I'm, on FaceTime watching them practice. And so, one thing that we do aside from, keeping me grounded because to them, I'm part of their world and they're part of mine. When I'm home, we always do family dinner. It's a priority. We always eat together when we can. Like we have family sort of rituals that, that are built around like my schedule in some ways. And, I think that keeps me and is a constant reminder of, yeah, like this is why I I am doing this job and this is how I bring my whole self to work is by remaining, grounded in my why, which is, in my family.
I love it. So, what barriers, because again, with any climb, but what barriers or biases did you encounter as a woman in healthcare and how did you move through them?
I think that one of the things that I am less so now, right, at my big age, but I think that even early in my career and even probably recently, I appear as though I'm relatively young, or especially back then, and so people would, be like, "Oh, do you even remember that? Are you old enough to remember that?" Right? And so a lot of it was more like intentionally playful, but sort of like ageist kind of things. And I think sometimes it was also like a little bit before they got to know me and got to know my work was sort of like a prejudging of how could you possibly be in this role? How could you possibly have had enough experience to warrant or have earned your title? And so some of those like types of barriers, I think, and leading teams of people that are, sometimes more advanced in their career than I was, or, just learning to navigate and be sensitive to some of those things. I wouldn't say those were barriers, but I encountered them a lot. And I think, again, the self-awareness element is I'm here to do a job, you're here to do a job, like we're gonna get through this. And then over time, giving it time, like over time my work spoke for itself and it wasn't an issue. But I do think like the initial sort of engagement could have, especially like again early and mid career, was like, who are you and how did you grow? So it's gotten, it's markedly improved, but still, I think that again, you got, 4 generations of people in the same workplace right now, and each generation sort of is a little different. And so engaging with and collaborating with people where they are is, I think a really important element of leadership and of, getting to know people and as people.
I love how you navigated that, and it did not erode your passion for where you were going. You just moved with it. So when we think about, just the environment, and as you mentioned, with multiple generations in the workplace, how do you cultivate a strong leadership culture? And because the podcast focused on women, we'll keep it there. But how do you cultivate a strong leadership culture at Sunshine Health, especially for women and emerging leaders?
I think a couple things like in healthcare, women are, like there's like 80, 70 to 80% women, right? Which does help like from a like how do we build leaders? How do we, have programs that support them? But I think it's really just everybody shows up again to do a good job. Everybody's voice carries same and similar weight. Everybody's ideas come in to the same place. But also, if there are people have different personalities, and sometimes it's, hey Kim, what do you think about that? And giving a light and shining a light on some of the, things that people are working on that may be lesser known. I think it's also just like a safety kind of culture. Like this is a safe space. We have a psychologically safe space. I want to know about people as people. I want, to know about like, oh, you had, you had your birthday this weekend, or you have your dog, like what's important to them. And I think like cultivating that and leading by example or modeling that behavior is another really important thing for like bringing emerging female leaders up, showing them that they can be whoever they want to be, they can bring their authentic self to work.
So, how do you remain purpose driven in such a complex and demanding industry? Because, again, healthcare is certainly one of them, and there are other just demanding kinds of industries as well. But how do you remain purpose driven?
I think one thing that we do here at Sunshine is we do mission moments. What those are like they're a spotlight on a specific thing that we did for a specific member or a specific family. And so it's a small thing, but it drives us back to why we are here, to the people that we serve, and to what kind of impact the work we do has on our members and their families. And so, when we always pull it back to the member or the stakeholder, the provider, the person in the thing in the center is always, it's not us, right? It's how do we bring all the things together to impact this member and their family through our relationship, through our partnerships, through our internal resources. But that like North Star, again, helping our communities and helping our members continues to keep us and me grounded and driving towards that end goal of doing the right thing for the people that we serve.
I love it. So what advice, would you give to women aspiring to enter or advance in healthcare leadership?
I think that there's this sort of weird balance that female leaders have with like being too outspoken or being not outspoken enough or being too aggressive and getting labeled as such or not being aggressive enough or being too passive. And I think that, again, this comes back to like who you are as a person, what your center, how you show up. It's just, be comfortable in your own skin, be comfortable sharing your ideas. Don't shy away from a difficult conversation that you have with care, right? That's one of our, guiding principles here is courageous conversations with care. Like there are ways to make sure that your message is conveyed and heard appropriately without, getting, stigma. And it's crazy because like ask any male leader, they're not thinking about that. And it's crazy that we have to even have this conversation. But I think just like don't overthink it, right? Like show up who you are, say what give your opinion, stand behind it, support it with data, whatever it is. I just think that probably a decade ago now, like it was like lean in, sure, yes, absolutely lean in, do all of those things. But I think it's also just embracing your areas of opportunity and continuing to seek out ways to learn more, be exposed to more, and just attaching yourself or connecting with people that can continue to help you develop and that are going to tell you the truth. You always need a truth teller. You need somebody that is going to look in your face and be like, you did great in that meeting. But in the same breath, be like, and the next time, here are some areas that you could maybe do a little bit differently or better. I give you an example, and I know that I'm talking.
No, go ahead. I am literally just thinking of all these notes being taken. I'm thinking of mics being dropped across the globe. I'm thinking a lot of people that you are, making free through this conversation. So please do share.
I had the pleasure of being on a panel recently, and I was sitting in the middle of the panel. And as you can see, I talk with my hands. I'm always moving. Like I've got this like need to move. I have a lot of difficulty sitting still. And so during this panel, like I'm sitting on the edge of my chair and I'm rocking, right? Because that is a natural movement for me. One of my team members who was in the audience hit me up like the next day and was like, hey, small, tiny edit for you next time you're on a panel. Don't rock in the chair. And I was like, yeah. I was like, I know. I knew I was doing it. I didn't stop doing it. I good happening, but again, I was like, was it distracting? And they were like, it was a little distracting. I was like, good to know. Noted. So I think the beauty of this is like everybody at every level needs feedback. Like I welcome that so readily from my team, from anybody like on the street could come and be like, hey, that rocking, weird. Don't do it anymore. And I accept that, right? So I think that like my coaching to like because sometimes people get worked up about feedback and take it very, very personally. And I think that I, again, have this weird way that I just think all feedback is fine and good. And I don't have to agree with it. But if that's one person's perception, then it matters to me because that's not how I meant it. But that's how somebody took it, right? It's not what you say, it's how you say it. Everyone will remember not what you said, but how it made them feel. Like all of that stuff, even if you don't agree, that's how they, interpreted what you said. And so it's always an opportunity to learn or do something slightly different. And anybody should feel, you need someone that's comfortable with you to tell you that kind of stuff. Like it's minor, right? And a lesser, person probably wouldn't have even mentioned it, but I want to know that stuff. I want people to tell me that.
It makes you better. It makes you aware. And I love the fact that it also makes you human and that you're okay. I mean, that anyone can share the organization. So thank you. I mean, again, totally powerful. And I know this will probably be the most replayed moment. Now, as we approach the end though, what does leading with empathy mean to you in the managed care space?
Yeah, I think again, I've talked a little bit about like how we put the member in in the center, and I think leading with empathy is thinking about how the work we do and the decisions we make impact the people we serve. And that's again not just our members and their families, though they are a huge part of it. It's how is a policy decision going to impact our providers? How is a decision that we make internally and then communicate out? How does that impact, our stakeholders, our regulators? So thinking about how and trying to be very purposeful and thoughtful about the downstream, like even unintended, right, downstream impacts to people that we serve and that are who are our partners, and how we make sure that we're caring for them and our people, right? Because your people are the most important part of this whole thing. Without a team, you cannot do anything. And so also thinking about the decisions that we make, the way we communicate, how frequently we communicate with our teams is also like a monumentally important part of like our role as leaders, and my role as the CEO. So just a focused and concerted effort on like, okay, well, how does that impact them, and how will they react to that, and how do we is there a way that we can wrap our arms around them? And sometimes the answer, quite frankly, is no. Like, this is how it is, and we have to be okay with that too. But knowing that we thought through it and that we considered it makes us, again, that's the human element of leadership.
Human element, and the fact that you're asking the question. So listeners, please do take note that, the questions are being asked. You can't always do it with a magic wand and fix everything, but you certainly can ask the question. And last but not least, crystal ball, what legacy do you hope to leave through your leadership at Sunshine Health?
Man, legacy is a big question, and I candidly don't really think about it that much, right? Like, I think about impact that we have through the work we do. I think I like to live by like leave it better than you found it. And so, to the extent that we could take all the culture work that has already been developed over the decade of work that Sunshine has, an existence that Sunshine has had and experienced before I took this seat, just making it even incrementally better, whether it's culture, whether it's outcomes, whether it's role perception, whether it's, relationships, like those cornerstone building blocks, just even a little increment better or different or more efficient is what I hope. Because again, it's such a large organization. We have so many people showing up to do the right thing, rowing in the same direction, same North Star, but even making it just incrementally better. And better is a subject to your interpretation, but I think that just like leaving my little fingerprints throughout, our recruiting strategy, or through our, focus on community partners, and just making sure that we're showing up, as best as we can every day.
Well, Shar, I have no doubt that you will accomplish that and more. And you talk about fingerprints. I think it will be a big set of high heels of shoes to fill with all the ground that you're going to cover. So I'm excited to see your leadership, and also say more audience. I am excited to see how we are learning and growing together, and how we continue to do that. And we couldn't do it without the wonderful voices coming to us. So Shar, thank you so much for being a powerful voice and for sharing and caring.
Thank you so much.
Until the next time, audience, see you soon.